Hey everyone, welcome back to Ask a VC. My name is Ryan Floyd. I'm a managing director at Storm Ventures. Today, we're going to talk about channels and partners. They're so critical to building any successful SaaS business, but there's a lot of challenges in building those channels effectively. So let's get into it. Okay, so today we're here talking with Christoph, who most recently was CRO at MobileIron, which was a Storm portfolio company, and actually has been spending the last several months with us as an EIR. And wanted to have him on today because MobileIron had a really robust channel program and did a lot of business via partners and channels. And so we thought it would be a great conversation as it relates to other startups and drawing some lessons out of that experience. So Christoph, thanks for joining me today.
Thanks for having me, Ryan.
All right. Well, so let's just start. I mean, look, most companies find value at some point working with, partners and channels. But in my conversation with startups, it's often really confusing about when to engage, when to kind of start that process, how to think about these partners. So let's just start with the basics. Tell everybody, from your point of view, what really constitutes a partner, a channel, a reseller? Can you kind of draw some of that out so we can get some basic vocabulary out of the way?
Mm-hmm. Okay. I mean, obviously, there are different types of channel partners that you might want to work with, right? So they're the type of resellers, distributors, service providers, system integrators. So maybe either also ecosystem partners. So there's a multitude of different types of channel partners that you might want to work with. And obviously not all of them typically fit into your go-to-market playbook, right? So depending on the way that you do business, your products, your solutions, you might want to choose one or the other or all of them. But it has to be tied to actually what your playbook and your solution set in the market looks like, what kind of channel partners to work with.
Yeah, I often think about it. I think it's great. I think about it just really simplistically is they're partners that in service providers really that are in the field who know your customer really well and likely are working with them, solving lots of different problems. And you're really just as the software company, working with them to help provide a better service into that customer. When these companies start to think about working with partners, Christoph, they, often most of them get excited about some of these really big organizations. Whether it's the big consulting firms, the big system integrators, and, it always seems to me it's easy to get lost with some of these bigger partners. There's so much going on. Let's just kind of start there about what constitutes a good partner. How should companies kind of get started in thinking about channels and partnerships?
I mean, it's exactly as you mentioned. Obviously, it's very exciting if you work with a large partner, large system integrator or other type of partner. But obviously, you need to do a lot to actually win their attention, to make sure that they are motivated and to work with you and drive business with you, right? Typically, I find that is more easy with smaller partners, right? So you have a closer contact, you have a chance to cover more of their sales organization with your sales enablement, your channel enablement program. And so if you have smaller organizations committed, maybe they're from their sales leadership point, or maybe even the CEO, you have buy-in from their CEO, then typically you can be productive with these type of channels much faster than with the larger ones. But obviously, you have to really find the right ones, right? And make sure that you find the right model to work with them. And that is actually the key criteria there. They have to understand that there is a lot of business to do with you, not just what you want them to do, right? You want to sell them to sell your product, your services, your solution. But obviously they have maybe even an additional interest in adding their services on top, right? So services that you as a vendor might not want to provide or cannot even provide, right?
Right.
it might be that they can actually upsell you to other solutions that they have sold into their customer base. And clearly, I mean, they also have to have the right customers that you are looking or that you want to work with, right? So getting access to their customer base is important, but for these channel partners, it is critical that they have a solution that they can actually sell into these customers that fits well with other things that they do with these customers, like providing services.
Yeah, I think, that point is so right on. I mean, really thinking about strategically how you fit into their bag of products and services. Because, I think so many startups make the mistake and they think that a channel is like an extension of their sales force and they're out selling their product. And the reality is, to some extent there's truth in that. But really, it has to fit strategically into what that reseller's business is all about in servicing that customer. And I think about it just really simplistically, and it may sound obvious, but the best partners are the ones where there's really a lot of initial pull in the field. Like, I generally think that partners are not great at generating demand. Like, if you're looking to a partner to create demand for whatever it is you're selling, it's probably going to be a pretty tough road to hoe in general, at least in my experience. What you really want to find is where there's actual pull in the field around your product with those partners, because that way then you can make those partners relatively successful quickly in selling and driving value into your customers versus a cold start where you don't really know where they ought to go hunting for a good fit.
All right. And I think the point of generating demand, I mean, obviously, if you go in and expect them to generate demand for your product, your solutions right away, that doesn't work, right? So typically in the beginning, when you start working with them, there's more that you have to provide as a vendor, that you have to give to them as a vendor, like give them some initial lead, give them a lot of enablement, give them help the demand that you as a vendor generate, work with these partners to actually fulfill that demand. But when a partner actually has built a business around you, around your products, right? He sees that he can be successful with your products. Then actually it's the right point to actually work with them on generating demand as well. That is probably the right time to really start your channel marketing with them to make sure that they give you access into their customer base. But before that, I think it's more like a take and give thing, right? So you rather give them something early on before you can actually start working with them on generating demand on their own.
Well, tell me, let's go back to MobileIron. So tell me, from your view into MobileIron with their successful channel program, since everybody probably isn't familiar with MobileIron, maybe you can, walk us through a little bit of that and what worked really well at MobileIron. Because, when I think about, I think I've told you this story, when I think about what, made MobileIron so successful and, dating way back, it was that with the telecom providers, they enabled them to sell more plans, data plans into their corporate customers if they were able to provide security on those mobile devices, which is what MobileIron did. And so it was really like, when you think about it just from that framework, it was really an amazing match because it served to really drive partner revenue up by bringing MobileIron into those accounts because it kind of enabled them to unlock, more with their existing customer base.
Exactly. I mean, that was a perfect match, right? We came into the market with a solution that enabled them to support and grow their core business, right? So the example that you brought up with the mobile network operators, I mean, that was exactly the time when they started selling the iPhone into the business, right? So, and obviously a solution like ours actually supported that goal. And we actually had different types of channel partners where we supported their core business in different ways. So one kind of partner that were these mobile network operators. So we supported their device sales, their data plan sales into the enterprise, right? But there were also other partners that, for example, partners that sold the messaging solutions, like the Exchange, the Lotus Notes servers back in the days, right? So, and they all had to provide mobile access to these messaging solutions, right? So that is exactly where we came into play. So they could actually enhance their core business and what they sold to their customers with mobile, right? And then also there were other types of partners that where we actually kind of substituted their core business. They saw their core business, and back in the days it was like the BlackBerry business for them, right? Everybody had a BlackBerry, and then everybody wanted an iPhone, right? So they saw their business shrinking, right? So they had to find a new business that was close. They wanted to sell to the same buyer. They wanted to tap into the same budget, and that is where actually we came in and helped them to actually substitute their core business with something else. So it has to always be a match, right? Match with something that they do already. And then it's much easier to convince them. And if you support them in their way to keep in business, to grow in business, that is when you find a good match and you get a lot of attention from these channel partners to work with you.
What, drawing from that experience, Christoph, what are some of the, like, if you were to give advice to the startups that are out there and the founders thinking about trying to form a partnership like you were able to do at MobileIron with these mobile operators, what are some of like the pitfalls that they ought to look out for? What are some of the things you tell them to avoid or to do to make those partnerships and those reseller relationships even more successful?
Mm-hmm. So I think what these organizations need to understand is that it's not done by signing up a partner, right? So that is totally the wrong expectation there. It never works with you sign a partner and the partner runs and is productive.
And it magically appears. Yeah.
It doesn't happen, right? So, I mean, there are miracles, but they don't happen frequently. So, actually, you have to invest in these partnerships, right? So you need to be ready, actually, and you also need to make sure that you as an organization are ready. You have everything you need to run a successful or to build a successful channel business. And that goes with enablement, right? You need to be sure you need to enable these partners. So with like sales, pre-sales enablement, when you want them to provide services for your product, it's kind of, you need to do services, post-sale enablement, right? So, or support enablement. If you ask your partners to provide like first or second level support for your solutions, you need to enable them to do so, right? Because these partners, when they are not enabled, they are not confident in delivering what they are supposed to deliver, they simply won't do it.
That's right. And their loyalty, I think that's a great point. Their loyalty, probably, at least at the beginning, is going to be definitely on the side of the customer, not with you.
Right? Oh, yeah, absolutely. I mean, these are long-lasting relationships, right?
Yeah.
And these are trusted relationships too. And you come in as the new vendor, you have to build up that trust.
I mean, I think it's also, yeah, it's a great point that I think, sometimes too, there's this feeling that you can, give a partner your product to sell and they can just make it successful in that account. But the advice I would give is like early on, even though you're working with a partner and a reseller, you ought to probably be spending just as much time in that customer as you would with somebody you're taking direct until you feel, to your point, you feel confident that the partner feels confident in the implementation and the post-sale support, so that doesn't fall through the cracks. Because if that, you're right. I mean, if that reseller isn't successful post-sales, they're going to be very reluctant to continue to try and expand the relationship with the rest of their customer base going forward. So that initial traction and that initial time you spend making those partners and your customers successful is going to be time well spent. And it might be counterintuitive because you might think, well, geez, I'm paying this partner so much money to help me in these accounts. Shouldn't they be able to do it? Maybe it's worth, commenting on that because, just in terms of the compensation, because I think a lot of people feel like, I'm giving up so much to these partners, especially early on. How should people think about that in terms of, compensating the channel and, really think about investing against that for, future growth?
I mean, in the beginning, it clearly is an investment, right? So you invest in a lot of resources, you invest in collateral, in enablement, you invest in giving them maybe more margin than they would deserve on one of the first deals, right? So by the end, it's not so different from what you see in your own direct sales or in your sales organization, right? If you hire a new rep, he's not productive on day one either, right? So you might pay a salary to a whole group of newbies on day one, and you get the benefits in 6 months or whenever they are ready. So I think that kind of analogy is pretty much the same, right? So you have to see it as an investment. So a channel business doesn't come for free. It comes as you have to invest into it. You have to figure out if it's the right thing for you to do, but then you have to invest in it in terms of enablement, in terms of giving them margin, in terms of many, many other things throughout your organization, right? And that's not like a task that you can do with like one person doing that part-time. So it's really, as a sales and go-to-market organization, it's something that you have to consciously decide, understand what the investment needs to be, and then go for it. And also expect in the beginning that you need to shadow the first deals very, very closely. Because the one thing that you don't want is that the channel partners, they work on deals on their own and they fail, right? So you might have done all your enablement, it might all be great, but still they fail on their first 1, 2, 3, 5 deals. Guess what? 6th, 7th, 10th deals is something they don't even bring you into anymore. Right. So the very first ones need to be successful. And the best way to make these successful is if you are close to these deals, you work with them, you shadow them, you provide resources and support. And then and maybe you even kind of hand a deal on the silver tablet, right? So like a lighthouse deal, something that's very visible in a key customer. So just in order to get attention and show and prove that you can win together.
Right. Yeah. So I think, so the lesson learned is be generous. Probably be more generous than you might think you should be, because you really ought to be thinking at it as an investment. I think that's a great analogy to really be thinking as an investment, because it's got a timeline and a horizon. And that also means you ought to be measuring it and really thinking about it as an investment that you're making, as an organization, which also, implies it's not something you ought to do, 50 different partners at the beginning, right? I mean, you probably only spend time with 1 or 2 partners at the beginning and make sure you make those successful and be super thoughtful about those relationships versus trying to stand up some huge reseller network at the beginning, because it's almost, guaranteed to fail if that's the path you go down.
No, I totally agree. I think it's really quality over quantity in the beginning, right? You want to show success right away with the right partners, because let's face it, that also attracts other partners, right? These partners, they are in competition to each other as well, right? So, and if one partner in a space is successful with working with you, the others will come to you and they're kind of begging to work with you, right? And that's a nice thing. They come to you because they want to work with you.
Right.
And if you then create like a fair competition between these partners, right? So like, okay, everybody's treated the same way. If there are conflicts between partners, you as a vendor help to resolve these conflicts and so on, right? Then you create like a healthy business where everybody is motivated and feels trust in working with you.
Yeah. Well, so, I think that's right on the money. So thinking about then, you've got these partners stood up, you've focused on 1 or 2. What should your expectations, you think, be in terms of timing? Because I know that's another stumbling block that a lot of founders get frustrated by, is that, it takes time, which I think also, really makes the argument this isn't where you ought to be investing really early on, when you're, less than $1 million in ARR. I mean, it's just because the time frame to get some of these networks stood up, can be longer. Well, what thoughts do you have? I mean, what should your expectations be on timing, results? How should one think about that?
So, I mean, you cannot start too early, right? So if you are not ready yet with your go-to-market playbook, so you are still kind of experimenting, you don't want to have partners experiment the same way, right? You have to understand, okay, what actually works. And then you have to also transfer that to a playbook that actually works for a partner as well, right? So you kind of need to translate that into something that works, because obviously the same pitch that you as a vendor would do is not the pitch that a channel partner can do in certain. I mean, there's a huge overlap, but it's not exactly the same typically, right? So you need to be able to actually build that and help them to do that. And that takes time. You also need to, the same way like you need to build your own playbook, you also need to figure out how to be successful with a channel. So it takes time, no doubt. But I think we talked about it earlier, right? So when you actually help them on the demand gen side, right? So you maybe hand them ready-made opportunities or leads that they can work on, right? And they can start learning from there. This actually accelerates the time until you see the first success, right? So I think it's absolutely critical to really hand them some business, ready-made deals or like leads or something that they can practice on those, right? You might not want to give your at the top 5 or Fortune 500 top lead to a brand new partner, obviously, right? Or even if you maybe if you know that the partner has a great relationship there and you drive that deal very, very closely together with the partner, that's a chance too, right? To show that you are aligned and that you give all the support to this particular partner. But don't expect that you can like throw a great lead to them on day one and they can run it right away. And but what's the timeline? I mean, it really depends on what your sales cycle in the end is, right? So, but it really, especially in the beginning, it adds time to the sales cycle. But later on, right, when these partners are working with their customers that they have a long-run trusted relationship with, typically it accelerates your sales cycle, right? So kind of you kind of stretch it out a bit in the beginning, but you benefit from it later on because that existing relationship helps you drive the sales cycle down.
No, I think that's right. I mean, that's why you want to make the investment, because eventually, you know, if you've done your job right, then, you know, you really ought to be accelerating some things, because there's opportunities that are going to occur in the field that your partners are going to be aware of that, you know, it's likely that, you know, you may not have seen it as early, and it just kind of accelerates everything with that customer set, especially if those partners are trusted relationships with your customers already. That just is going to save, you know, a ton of time. You know, I think with the investment too, I mean, really, you know, my advice would be for founders to really have someone in the organization that's accountable for really looking at these partner relationships and to see whether or not they're starting to bear fruit for whatever reasons, that the product's resonating with that customer set, the ability to sell makes sense. Because, you know, you really got to be spending time thinking about all those questions, because as you said, it's an investment. And the reason that, you know, I usually give the advice to startups to really avoid it early on, you know, when revenue is, you know, like I said, $1 million in ARR, it's hard to say exactly what the number is, but it's definitely where they're not really into that go-to-market phase yet of their business. Because if you don't have a sales force yet that can really drive repeatable sales motion, it's really impossible to expect that you're going to get partners that can drive a repeatable sales motion, because you have even less control over those partner relationships in terms of how they go out and they sell into that customer set. So really, it takes time. First, you really have to believe that you've got your own sales force, however you're doing sales, where you can really articulate that sales value proposition into the customers, and you can really clearly communicate it, deal with objections, know who you're selling to, why you're selling to that person, because you have to be able to translate that into your partner relationships. Otherwise, you're just kind of shooting in the dark, and, you know, it'll be, I think, generally very frustrating, and certainly will take a long time to spin up those channels, because it'll just be hard to make those partners, you know, successful. Like going back to what I said earlier, I think, you know, in many ways they fulfill demand, the partner channels, and to really expect them to be out there prospecting, you know, cold leads, that's probably, you know, not reasonable to expect them to do that, because most of those partner organizations simply don't have the margins to be able to invest that early into a sales cycle.
And early on, I mean, your business with them typically is too small, right? They simply cannot afford it, right? So you have to reach a critical mass before you can actually get more attention, more prospecting power from them, right? So, I mean, I remember a conversation that we had with a distributor a while ago, right? And he told me, you know what? These vendors that are successful working with us, we have at least, and he gave us a number, a certain amount of business with us, right? In this particular case, it was like $3 million, right? He said all the vendors lower than $3 million, we simply cannot afford them the way we to work with them. We, as an organization, we have to have a certain amount of business already, right? So, and that is why, I mean, first beginning phase and the investing phase, you have to give them a little bit more until you reach a certain threshold where they see, okay, now it makes sense for me to invest.
That's
right? And not just opportunistic in.
Yeah, I think it's a great point. I mean, because they're making an investment on their side too about whether or not to really, be spending time. And as I just said, they don't have the margins likely that you have in your product business. And so their investment decision in a lot of ways is even greater to invest against, your product. And so, it takes time. And I think you have to be aware that they're trying to run their own business. That reminds me of something else you got to tell founders too, is that, a reason to wait until you've got a little bit of revenue to really chase partners is because, you really can't control whether or not that those partners are going to be successful. I mean, it's an investment, as you said, there's a lot of variability in it. And so really making sure first you're able to nail your own sales motion with whatever you're doing, whether it's product led, whether it's a direct sales effort, and feeling confident about that, to me, really seems like a prerequisite before really going after the partners, just because you have just so much control over what you're doing internally with your own team.
Right. And there would also be risk, right? If you're not ready yet, so you don't have that repeatable sales motion, you don't really know why you sell, how you sell, and then you start working with partners. I mean, you only have one chance, right? You have one chance to be successful. And if because you're not ready, it immediately fails, that relationship is gone forever, right? So that's why it has to be like a hit right away, and therefore be prepared before you actually start, I would say.
Well, Christoph, this has been this is great. I mean, we could talk for hours here about partnerships and channels, but I think this is some good basics for founders out there in terms of how they ought to think about these different relationships. And I appreciate you spending the time and sharing some of the lessons from your time most recently at Mobile Iron. All right.
My pleasure. So I hope that it's helpful to some startups that think about building a channel business. So, we learned the lesson, and I think we have been quite successful. So
all right.
Happy to
thank
share.
you so much, Christoph. All right. Take care. Bye-bye.
All right.